just joint venturing on a deal or two, like a few deals, right? It's like there's so much education that happens, and where people have the opportunity to learn and earn at the same time, even though they don't get the majority of the deal, it's like way better, way better.
You partnered with somebody, an experienced investor, and that really helped you get into the industry of real estate investing. So for people, do you think that's a good way for people to get into investing, is to partner with an experienced investor? And if yes, or if no, why, and what are some things to look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say yes and no. It always depends on the person, right? It's like you want to have... You want to do your diligence on like whoever you're potentially doing a deal with, making sure that they know what the heck they're doing, and like have done deals. Like, the guy, Frank, that I ended up doing that first deal with, I asked him to, like, I was like, hey, like, I'm going to bring you deals. Like, I'd love to like just learn from you. And like, he showed me a couple projects he was doing. So like I saw with my own eyes projects he was actively doing, why he was doing things a certain way, how he got the deal. And, so I built a little bit of a relationship with them. And I think a lot of times, where people get into trouble is like they just go ahead and just like partner with someone in a deal, and they don't know anything. There's no like accountability of who's responsible for what, who's funding what, like all, so it's like you want to have those conversations. And so I would say, yes, it's a good idea, but you need to do your diligence. You need to be clear on who's accountable for what. You need to know what's going on and the whole process, like clear communication. And like, for example, right now, I'm not really doing much in the real estate space now. I just, rentals and Airbnbs, but, I have a buddy of mine that, has his mobile home dealer's license, and, he has a few deals going right now where he's like buying lots, tearing down old mobiles, putting new ones on, and, he's out of money, and he's like, hey, like, I'll give you 50% of this deal that I have here if you'll just fund all of it. And I'm like, freaking yeah, absolutely. Like I'm in, sign me up, So it's like, but it's like, and some people, they want to just like count all of the money and just like, not JV. But for him, like he would have just passed on the deal because he didn't have a capital source, where it's like, I could at least make 50% and not have to worry about any of the money for in his eyes. And I'm like, I don't have time to go screw around with that deal. But he can just go and do everything, but I'll fund everything. Exactly. And so it's like, it's just finding the, in like a fix and flip, there's really only like three pieces of value. There's the person with the deal, the person with the money, and the person with the construction. That's it. There's not really anything else to offer. So it's like, who's doing what in that value exchange?
Exactly. Exactly. I would rather have a piece of something than a piece of nothing.
I think a lot of people get caught up on that in the beginning too, thinking that they don't have a big enough piece of the pie, right? And I think at the beginning, it's important to note that anything is better than nothing, especially on a deal like that. And the value, you can't always see the value that the other person is bringing, and experience is so valuable, right?
It's invaluable.
That's a big thing on it, is like joint venturing on some deals. Not saying that people need to go full out partner, but it's like just joint venturing on a deal or two, like a few deals, right? The education you get during that process is worth way more than the actual money is, even if they're taking the lion's share of the deal, because they're going to, you can watch the decisions they make through the process and understand how they manage the project, how they manage, their contractors. Like you get to learn so much, and like the decision making of like why we need to buy it at a certain price because of XYZ reason, like how hard money works for people that don't know that. And, they're bringing in private capital. Like how does that work? It's like there's so much education that happens, and at the where people have the opportunity to learn and earn at the same time, even though they don't get the majority of the deal, it's like way better.
That's a huge win. And we always talk about that. Like hindsight's always 20/20, and nothing builds character like experience. But we got a master's degree in flipping on our first deal.
First couple ones.
And so we always say like, we wish we knew all of that and that we could even JV with somebody. Like we were that naive that we didn't even know we could bring this to an experienced investor and they would even want to, because there's 3 parts to a deal and etc. Like we would have learned and probably made money on our first deal if we brought it to an experienced investor, because we didn't know that the foundation was going to cost $40,000. You know what I mean? Just all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's nuggets of gold right there. Okay, so you were working with Frank, and then what happened next?
Yeah, so was doing some deals with him, and I'm like, this is cool because like he just handles construction and brings the money, and like we're making money on some flips, and so was doing that, and I was doing then just like my own wholesaling, the old methods that don't work as well as they used to, the old days of doing text marketing, and when you could just rip a list and send it for 0.0001 cents a message,
good old days, man.
And you didn't have to register your HD2P or whatever the heck the thing is,
10DLC, no 10DLC back then.
It's like you could just freaking rip a list and send out 100 text messages a week, and it was a good old days. But So I was doing text marketing, and then I had some cold callers, and I was wholesaling like 2-3 deals a month, nothing crazy, and then like one would be a flip, every other month with that Frank guy, and but I was always trying to do more, and then what ended up happening was I connected with as you guys already mentioned, Pace. I wasn't, a great closer, and he was good at it, and but I was getting leads and he wasn't good at getting leads, and so I was like, if I bring you leads, like show me how to close better, and you can make the money on them, just show me what you're doing. And so then that's what ended up happening, and but then like the first deal, he's like, no, like let's just JV on these deals, like that's cool, and we got like 5 contracts in like a month, and I was like, oh, this is better than my 2 to 3. And they were deeper because he was better at closing and getting better pricing. And so, so a few months of that, and then we partnered on the wholesale business and ran that for some years on the wholesale fix and flips and, the rentals and Airbnbs, and then off into all the other things.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I continuously hear from you throughout this journey is you are always willing to learn and partner with people with experience. You know what I mean? So like,
even if it meant $0 because you were going to learn and establish a relationship. Totally.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, how do you find somebody to do that with in your market? Like, you did it a few times, you know what I mean? Was there any like specific things you were doing to try and hunt those people out, or were they just kind of falling into your lap?
No, I was hunting. I was for sure hunting. Like people will be like, oh, like you're lucky that you like met that Frank guy and then met this other. I was intentionally going out. I was going to meetups. I was going to events. I was listening to podcasts. I was finding anyone that was doing anything locally that was like doing flips and like seeing how I can meet with them. Like, I ended up in Doug Hopkins' office like when I was like 21, and I was like meeting him. Like, how could I do deals? And like, it's like I won't even list the amount of names of people that I met with, like a couple dozen people, like over like my first couple years, just trying to get in the door and like figure out how I could like bring value, and then like have a value exchange. And a lot of them didn't meet with me, wouldn't take the time, didn't respond to my messages, didn't respond to like I'd DM them on Instagram, I'd email them, and like a lot of people didn't. And so it's like whenever people are like, oh, well, you got lucky because connections, I'm like, I made the connections. I made them. I did not get introduced to one of those people. I made those connections by brute force.
Right. And being relentless and being consistent with trying to reach out with them, not just like they didn't respond kind of situation.
Yeah. People get all about her. Oh, people don't want to help me. It's like, that's just a victim mentality. Like I have a coach right now for business buying, and this guy, Adam, and he exited, an HVAC company for over $1 billion. And
an HVAC company?
Crazy. An HVAC company.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he, he's written some books, and, great guy. And like, I was listening to his podcast, and I'm like, man, like I want to get coached by this guy. And so I DM'd him on Instagram, no response.
Yep.
I emailed like his like company website info thing, no response. I messaged him on LinkedIn like 2 times, no response. Commented on something on LinkedIn of his, nothing.
Yep.
And then I found like, I don't even remember what website, but I was just like searching on podcasts that he was on, and he actually like put his email, like his personal email, and I was like, that's the one.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And I ended up emailing him, and then I was just like, hey, like, I love all your podcasts. I read all of your books. This one was my favorite. Loved what you did with it, and like this thing that I learned. So it's like, I wasn't just like a freaking knucklehead that like was trying to ask him questions he already answered in his books and already talked about on podcasts. So like, I reached out that way, and he's like, yeah, like I'm doing some coaching, and he's like, I only have a certain amount, because like it's just me. I'm just a guy that's written these books, and so that's how I started coaching with him, was like just
that's so cool.